Okay. Hello, everyone. Come into the chat room. I am Lydia Macondo, and I am the founder of the HBCU Experience. And I have been doing various events throughout the past year, focused on the HBCU experience, of course, and various aspects of it. And tonight we are going to be discussing diversity at HBCUs, more so the intersection of diversity at HBCUs and how that comes into play with cultural relations and how we have students at HBCUs who sometimes go underrepresented because they are not a part of the majority. And I wanted to give them a chance to share their stories with us tonight. And so I'm super excited to have them. And we are all in different parts of the world right now because, like I said, this is a multicultural experience. So you're going to get to hear from people from all over the world and who come from all over the world. And so I would like to first go ahead and introduce Dario. And Dario is a graduate from Hampton University in the class of 2020. He was a student athlete for Hampton University's sailing team, and he is a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And after college, he returned to Italy, and he is now pursuing his master's degree in international business. And we also have Christopher Bratcher, and he is a guest of ours from the Howard University. And he is a sophomore chemistry major on the pre-pharmacy track from Richmond, Virginia. He is a student athlete for Howard University's men's track and field team and a member of the Collegiate 100 at Howard. And after college, he wants to be an industrial and compounding pharmacist where he will help to discover new drugs to help fight cancer and new methods of delivering medications so patients can receive the specific care and prescriptions they need. We also have Rose, and I don't want to say this wrong. So Rose, can you come off of mute and help me say this right? Because I do not want to mess up your name.
Yes, my name is Rose Nguyen.
Rose Nguyen, and she is a graduating senior electrical engineer major from Buffalo, New York. And she is the president of the Institute of Electronic and Electrical Engineers, the senator of National Society of Black Engineers, and the historian of the Society of Women Engineers. She is a member of iMasons, and once she graduates, she will be working at ABC Technologies as a controls engineer. And lastly, we have Christian Baber-Kinney, who is a 27-year-old Hampton alum from Newport News, Virginia. He graduated with a BS in Aviation Management and MS in Sports Administration in 2018. And after college, now he has chosen to stay close to sports, and he works for ASICS and independently coaches youth football players in his community. So now that I have shared everyone's story, can you all please turn on your cameras and your audio so we can get introduced to you. Awesome. Thank you for joining me tonight. I am, like I said, excited to have this conversation with you all because I think, first of all, it's long overdue and it's not discussed enough, like how diverse HBCUs actually are. And so I guess we can go in order of how I introduced you all for the questions tonight. So my first question is, why did you choose an HBCU? And specifically, why did you choose Hampton or your other institution, Howard University?
Okay. So do I start? Right. Hello everyone. So the reason why I chose Hampton is a little weird because in Italy I had no idea about HBCUs, or I never thought about studying in the US because it's very expensive in relation to what university is in Italy. University in Italy is around 2,000 a year, so pretty much everyone can afford it. So nobody really thinks of going to the US to study because unless you have scholarships. So my goal was to study the UK in London, and then randomly one day I got a DM from a coach from the sailing team on Facebook, just really random, and he asked me to join the sailing team at Hampton, and I don't know, I just Googled it, and it's simple. So I took a flight. I was in high school, and I came to Hampton for 1 week. Just lived the Hampton life for the week, and I loved it. And then I thought it was gonna be a great experience to be a minority for once and learn from it. So that was my first goal and my main goal. And then yeah, that's it. The rest is history, I guess.
Wow, that's so crazy,
It
like how
happened
that worked
pretty
out.
random. Yeah, it happened pretty random,
Yeah.
and I had, to be honest, no idea because in Italy, like we don't talk about American schools that much, or if we talk, we talk about the big ones, Harvard or Stanford. Um, so I had no idea about the HBCU situation. I remember how I found out because I randomly Googled on IG. I searched for Hampton University to see like pictures of the people that were there and girls, like to see like, is that a school I should go to? I don't know. That was just like me being really young, and I remember that after that I Googled and I found out it was an HBCU, and that was great.
Wow, that's awesome. Actually, I have a friend from Switzerland, and her story is kind of similar because she's a student athlete. And yeah, kind of found out about Hampton. Like, I don't think she really did too much research in advance. And I think they reached out to her because she was like really good at what she did overseas with her sport. I think it's volleyball. And I think they reached out to her, and that's how she got here. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think the next person, yes, is Christopher. So Christopher, can you tell us why you chose to attend HBCU, and specifically why did you choose Howard?
Well, the biggest thing was that, well, to give like background about me, my mom is actually black and my dad is black and Puerto Rican. I just look like I'm only Puerto Rican, so a lot of people will say, "Oh, wow, like I would have never known that your family is black as well." And like I don't fault them for that. Like I know what I look like. It's just funny whenever I get encounters like that, and I'm just around Howard, and because of my family, I think I'm just around people that look like my family, and everything's good. But it's not so much the other way around. But the biggest reason why I chose Howard was because of that feel aspect. I wanted to be at a place where, the people look like just like my family. And when I was touring colleges as a student athlete, Howard was the only HBCU that I toured. The other ones were white institutions. And the feeling that I had when I stepped foot on Howard's campus versus the other institutions was, I mean, it was like night and day. At Howard, I felt like I was at home. I felt really comfortable there. I felt like I belonged with everybody else that was there. Whereas, in the white institutions, it kind of felt like, it was I was like in a different, like kind of an area. Like I was like the odd man out. And I don't know, I just didn't feel like as comfortable there. And that's really why I chose to go into HBCU, because I felt really comfortable there, being around other Black people. And I really wanted to be able to grow around people that, look like my family, have, the same values as me, same culture as me. And, it was just really, it's really something that you can't, get at a white school. I mean, white schools may have, Black alliances or clubs, but it's not the same as, having a historically Black college or university. So that's really why I chose HBCU. I chose Howard specifically because, great academics, great culture, great people. I love Howard for the people, and that's the reason why I stay and the reason why I hope to continue my education into pharmacy school. So those are really, really the only reasons why I chose to go to an HBCU and why I chose to go to Howard specifically.
I think it's so interesting that you touched on like how you go to like white institution schools and they have like alliances and organizations for people of color. And I remember my friend, she's at Georgetown, and she took me to, they have a black house and they have like a Latina house like right next to each other. And like to see like how their cultural like environments like in the house like were amazing, but like when you stepped outside of those houses, like how it was like vastly different, and it was just like very much like noticeable for me attending an HBCU. So I think that is a really really interesting story that you have, and yeah, I love that you have chosen to embrace both sides of who you are. I think that's absolutely incredible that you wanted to have that experience culturally in an HBCU. And I believe the next person is Rose. So, Rose, tell me your story, girl. Like, I want to
Okay.
know.
Yes, so I can get real personal, but so the reason why I chose to go to an HBCU was actually because in high school I did major in electrical engineering. I did a lot of engineering programs, like summer programs at PWIs, and it was just too much for me. Like it was just a lot. Just still being the minority and not feeling comfortable there. Um, and so when applying to colleges, I was just looking at colleges in between my parents. So my parents are separated. So, they're going back and forth like, no, she's going to come here for college. No, she's staying here. And I was like, no, I will be in the middle of you guys. So Virginia, for some reason, I don't know why I chose Virginia. I was looking into Virginia for colleges. So I applied all throughout the East Coast to a lot of PWIs in New York State because of the tuition assistance program there, but then also out of state was majority HBCUs, obviously. So I chose Hampton. Actually, I came for a Students Day, and it just felt very 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 comfortable. Like everyone was just so nice. I believe it's SRT who does the tours. Like yes, they were just so great. They were so nice, like so preppy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to hear. It was just very comfortable. So I knew at the end of the day that I wanted to come to Hampton. And also the engineering program at the time when I was doing research in Virginia for schools, Hampton was like top 50 in the nation. So I was like, let me go ahead and apply, and I got in. So yes, that's my story.
I love that. I love that. So, Christian, you are the last person to share. Tell us, what is your story?
Hi guys, how you doing? Um, so basically what happened, I'm from the Newport News, Hampton Roads area. However, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't move back until about my junior, senior year of high school. I moved back to the Newport News, Williamsburg area. But just growing up in Arizona, I was kind of always the minority, raised around Native Americans, Hispanic, Black population. I was in inner city Phoenix. So I built kind of like a socio-economical like comfort. Then transitioning to Williamsburg, like one of the most whitest places in the U.S., it was a little different for me. So I eventually started playing sports at my new school, started playing football. I ran track. My track coach is Mel Jones. He used to coach at Virginia Union, Brook State, and Hampton. I didn't have any offers coming out of high school, so he was like, well, I used to coach at Hampton. He was like, how about you go there? Like, it would be a good foot in the door for you, and the things you can learn will be like way further than the books. He was like, you can be he said, quote unquote, like blue-eyed soul brother. And he was like, you can learn so much more just from the world by, being around Black culture. And then you can like just go into PWI and emulating what you're experiencing right now. And so, yeah, he helped get me in, and it's been a great experience. And that was all she wrote after that.
Wow, I love that. So, can everyone just kind of share and touch on like how attending an HBCU like impacted and changed your life for the better, and like the lessons that you learned from it? Like, try to like sum it up for me, like the main lessons that attending an HBCU taught you about yourself and the world around you. So,
So yeah, it's pretty hard because I have so many lessons that are valuable. I think the main ones to me are just the understanding the African American community and what it means to be a minority. That's something, in Europe I never thought about, or we don't really talk about it because we do our own history. We see, of course, America, but not that well. So I never even thought about it. I didn't even know HBCUs existed. So I think just the fact that I don't know. I think I learned the thing I learned the most is pride that is behind your heritage and uh, being around your own culture. That's was very impactful for me because I never thought about it. I never saw it before because here, everybody's looks pretty much the same and all do the same thing. So just understanding the environment and appreciating, and that was very helpful for me and it's extremely valuable.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and I think that what you touched on is so key. Like, a lot of people don't know about HBCUs, and like they're like this hidden treasure that is kept from so many. And I know people in the African American community that had absolutely no idea that HBCUs existed up until they got to college and their friends were attending, and they're like, "Oh, you go to this institution I've never heard of." And that was something that I encountered in recognizing like how all of our stories are varied and like the importance of getting the word out about HBCUs. One of the main reasons I create this platform. So I think the next person, yeah, Christopher. So tell me, what lessons have you learned in what the past like 2 years that you've been?
I wouldn't really call them lessons. I would really call them like realizations. I think that's a better word for what I've, acquired by going to Howard for the past 2 years. And the reason why I say realizations is because, my family's Black, so I'm not really learning like that much that like I already did not know because, I grew up in that household. I come from Black people, so there wasn't anything that I've learned per se, but there was a huge contrast from, the schools that I went to before Howard, which was, predominantly white schools, middle school, high school, elementary school, I was, surrounded by white people. And when I went to Howard, the biggest thing that I realized is that there's so many different Black people and there's so many different, Black and Latino people or Black and, whatever other race that, if you come from, a not so diverse background like I did, where you're just around white people, you always think Black people are, a monolith. They only look a certain way, they only act a certain way, they only come from one certain culture, when that is not the truth at all. They come from various different cultures, they come from various different backgrounds, and they look different across the board. They speak different and, speak different languages. They speak different ways of English. And, you can only really realize that when you go to an HBCU, which is a culmination of Black people from all around the world. And Howard, it's called the Mecca for a reason. It's, it's really only something that you can experience as soon as you're on campus and you're around that kind of culture and setting. And, biggest thing I've realized is that, Black people aren't just a single monolith. It's a huge range and a huge spectrum of people that have rich cultures and rich languages and rich histories and rich backgrounds and have amazing characters. So that was really the biggest thing that I've realized, because it's not something that many people get to realize because not many spaces are really diverse.
That's really, really something that I've been trying to like express and like recognize, bring like attention to, especially during this time. I feel like I've seen now more than ever that there is so much diversity in our community, from like my own experiences. My mother's American, my father's not. My father comes from Cameroon, Africa. And like I've always been like navigating two cultures similar to you and trying to like figure out like how to fit in with like certain spaces where I feel like certain parts of me can be understood, but not all parts of me can be understood, even though I look like everyone around me. And it's like very, it's always been very interesting. And I think growing up, it was something that I kind of tried to like shy away from. Like if I was in one environment, feel like I would need to like completely ignore like the other half of who I was. And like coming into an HBCU where, like you said, like it's not just like the monolith experience where you can literally see the diversity. and experience like the many different cultures and aspects of what it means to be a Black person, like of like the diaspora, is something that I think is amazing. And so, yeah, that is something that I really, really cherish about an HBCU and about attending an HBCU. So, Rose, can you tell us what realizations or lessons you had while at Hampton?
Yes, so this is going to be very literal. So growing up, I realized that the history books they were always, white biased. And I remember in like the 7th grade, I was asking my teacher, my history teacher, I was like, how come we're not seeing the negative things that white people had did to Black people, like, during slavery and whatnot. Like I was like, I know it's more than this. Like this has been going on for centuries, and we're not really hearing much of the negatives that white people had done. And so then, like, that was like just the first point of my life I realized that what we are learning in like primary school, grammar school, secondary, high school, is not the truth. And I wanted to learn more about Black history, Buffalo is like a multi, I grew up around a lot of like Puerto Rican people, a lot of Black people, living in the city, living in the West Side. So like I knew a lot, like I learned a lot from the culture growing up, but so I would say like it wasn't really like a culture shock when I came to Hampton. It was again like very comforting and familiar. But I came to Hampton so I could learn more about Black history, really. And I had Dr. Watson for majority of my history classes, and Dr. Robertson even. And I learned so much about Black history. So that's what was like a literal lesson that I learned while attending Hampton.
That is something that I hear a lot of students say, even students that are African American or that are Black, talk about like what it's like to grow up in an environment where you don't hear about yourself, you don't hear about your history, it's not taught, it's completely overlooked, like it doesn't matter. And then when you attend an HBC, like you get to immerse yourself in your history, like you're walking on the grounds of the people that came before you, of your ancestors, and like how it's so sacred. And before, it's not like you attend an HBCU, it's not something that you may even recognize like is missing from your life. And then when you do attend, you're like, wow, like I have this missing piece that I didn't even know was missing, or that I didn't even really consider as important as I consider it now, because it teaches you to embrace who you are and where you come from, and like gives you a sense of confidence, especially like because like you were talking about in history, when you begin to study, you understand that so much of identity was ripped from people of African descent. Like we are not able to trace our ancestors, know exactly where we come from or who we are if we don't come from the continent of Africa. So like for me, there's a certain part of half of my family I will never know about. Like I'll never know like the full history of, and the other half I can know like the ins and outs, because the poor and the richest in the country know exactly who they are. They know their language, they know their tribe, their village, they know their regions. And so I learned that from one side. And the other side, I don't know anything past my great great grandmother, maybe. And so when they pass away, that history dies with them. And so like when you go to an HBCU, like you get to experience all of that, and like you learn so much more about like the totality of it. So I'm glad you touched on that. So Christian, tell us what lessons and realizations you had.
And there were so many. One of the biggest things that I really appreciated is I kind of got to live life like on the other side of the fence. Like for once in my life, I was the minority. Even quote unquote, I didn't have to struggle with a lot of things because the Black community was very welcoming. Like when I stepped on campus, but it was really just refine my outlook on so many things. You just realize, that you can be like a chameleon in the world. Like there's so many different social backgrounds and cues you take up that you never thought about before. And a huge thing too is like I definitely realized a lot of, even me, like unconscious prejudice that I would have, and a lot of white people don't like to, address that. But there's a lot of different things that, we always grew around. When you grow around other white people, like there's just other things that you subconsciously think, and so all those things totally went out the window. And it was just really cool to like kind of recreate how I saw the world and how I thought about the world. It especially helped me too when I was involved with Finish Line. I worked with them for about 5 years. I actually was on the Diversity Inclusion Council, and it was just crazy. We had to take all these courses and stuff like that, but this was already stuff that I learned at Hampton, so it wasn't anything really new to me. And I just thought that was kind of so cool because most of the things I learned like had nothing to do with books. It was all in just the culture and the experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, especially with me right now being in a weird transition of like about to go into the world as a full like time like worker and no longer being a college student, I'm beginning to recognize like as I'm in transition doing these internships and like preparing myself to work in the real world, I'm seeing how DEI training comes into play because there will be certain things that will be said in meetings with the people that I'm working with, and I will hear certain things that are like microaggressions that may not even be, like you said, like consciously thought about. And it's like, okay, like these are little things that need to be discussed, or like recognizing how with certain stereotypes I have to present myself a certain way and communicate things a certain way, because if it's like said in the wrong tone, or if I say it like with like, I don't know, I guess too much like assertiveness or aggression, like then it's considered like the angry black girl stereotype. So like recognizing those certain things and how DEI training comes into play, and how important it is to the real world is something that I think an HBCU definitely prepares you for. So the next question I have for you all is, I want to know a little bit more about like your backgrounds. So Rose, can you tell me a little bit more about like your culture, the culture of your family, what your like household cultures were like growing up?
Me? Okay. I wasn't sure if you said Rose or if we're going in the same order. So, for me, I am a first generation college American. My family, they immigrated in the 90s from, my mom immigrated from Thailand, my dad immigrated from Vietnam. So, I was very woke in my culture, I guess you could say, growing up. Being that I had that firsthand from my parents and my grandparents, even. So, growing up, I enjoy sitting on the floor, first off. So a lot of my friends here, like, they think it's so weird, but I just feel more comfortable sitting on the floor because growing up, we always ate with this table. It's a traditional table. It's called a kadok, but it's a small table. And like we'll share foods, like a family style meal, and we'll just share and eat off of this table. And that's, I really enjoyed. And then like my friends, they, once they realized that, this was, I like sitting on the floor, I like eating on the floor because I was brought up like this, because it's my culture, started to sit with me on the floor, eat on the floor with me, do work on the floor with me. Like they had like a great understanding of that. I was also very involved in the Laotian community. So my mom, she came from Thailand. She was a refugee in Thailand, but she was born in Laos. So I was very involved in like the Laos community, always doing like the traditional dances each year for Laos New Year's, and just, I know Laos is, I was actually my first language, so English is my second language. And yeah, like it was great growing up, being able to be bilingual and just have something, like, I guess, my culture is my representation. Like I was just very proud to be an Asian American growing up, just because I'm like, culture is so cool. Like everybody has their own culture and like you can learn off of each other. So yeah, like you can see the differences between that. So I guess, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this, so I ramble a lot. But yeah, so my culture growing up, we're very family oriented. I'm very close with my sisters, my cousins, and we always keep in touch, both in my family. And I make sure to go see them, like growing up, like each side of my family. So yeah, very family oriented. We eat on the floor. We cook on the floor as well. And yeah, I guess that's it.
I love that. I love so much of your story because I feel like it's very similar to. I live in Miami, first of all, I should say that. So living in Florida, like it's specifically in South Florida, like I encounter people from all over the world. So my closest friends in high school were Brazilian. They were Vietnamese. They were Russian. They were like from literally everywhere. Like from I can recall like learning like different phrases from them because we were bored studying for the SAT and ACT, and I'd be like, "Tell me how to say this in your language," and like we would just begin to conversate, and like I would learn all these different things, and so like. I remember like embracing all that they had to share with me, and I love that your friends were willing to do that with you as well. So, let's go in the order that I see people. So, Dario, tell me a little bit about your culture and what it was like growing up.
Okay, so not many people know, but I'm half Lebanese because my dad is fully Arab and my mom is Italian. So I always went back and forth between Lebanon and Italy. So I lived a life where I speak French and where, I just do all my Arab stuff. And then my Italian life, that's been my normal life for the past 24 years almost. And it was just, I guess I was lucky, born in a good home, educated parents, nothing ever, I never missed anything. So um, I can't complain on that at all. Actually, it was very good. And I guess the weirdest part about my culture was, to be honest, just the fact that in Italy we don't. I guess everybody kind of knows Italian culture. Like European culture is not really a taboo. It's pretty much the same around all Europe. So yeah, I guess my two lifestyles between Lebanon and Italy, they were the two main differences. And yeah, I guess not anything special, to be honest. Just
Are
a
there any
normal
similarities
European.
between the two?
Uh, Probably just a way of like talking when you talk about like business. Probably the business side of people, the Arab side and the Italian side, they kind of match, to be honest. They both like very they're like salespeople, kind of like, Arab salespeople, Italians can sell whatever. So it just kind of worked out that way for me. um but yeah, at Hampton now everybody knows that I'm half Arab because I guess I told people, but they just didn't remember, so nobody cared. And I'm cool with it. Like I look white, so I had no problem with being the white guy, and that's it. But extremely different from Hampton. Yeah, my culture was completely different from Hampton.
Wow, yeah, that is so interesting. Like navigating those two cultures growing up, I can definitely relate to that. So, Christopher, tell us what it was like for you growing up, like navigating two different.
Yeah, so actually, like the kind of funny thing about it is that my dad, who like I get my Puerto Rican side from, he wasn't in my life, so I actually don't have like really any connection to my Latino side. Only my black side. So growing up, it was regular. Like there wasn't anything particularly like out of the ordinary that So, but growing up, it was difficult because I look the way that I do, but I only got really the black side of my identity really realized, while my Puerto Rican side not so much because my dad wasn't in my life. So that was pretty. I don't know. It was kind of unique because it would be like I'm in spaces. I just think I'm like black and Puerto Rican. I'm cool being around black people. I'm cool being around Latino people, but a lot of people didn't have that same mindset when they saw me. But I'll be cool with anybody, right? Because that's my family. Like whenever I see another black person, I was like, oh, that looks exactly like my family member, and I'm totally comfortable being with them. But growing up, I actually remember this one comment that I got from a teammate in track, and she was black, and I don't know, we were talking about something or just arguing. It was just, we were arguing about something like petty or something. It wasn't really that serious, but I remember her saying to me that, "Oh, you're really not one of us." And that really stuck to me because I always saw myself as, black and Puerto Rican. Like I didn't really say, "Oh, I'm only Latino," and I don't identify black. I'm not like that at all. I always identify myself as being black and Latino. I've never denied my black side, and I know a lot of Latinos do that when they do, come from black parents. And I think it's, terrible that they do that, and I'm never one of those people. So when I heard her say that to me, I was kind of shocked for a second, and I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything bad back to her, but I said, "Do you not know my mom is black? My family's black." And she was like, "Oh no, I didn't know." And so that was that. But growing up as Afro Latino, but not really having both sides of my family history or, my identity realized, made it kind of awkward in some situations, like the situation I just described, where, I may feel like, I'm comfortable in both black and Latino spaces, but, some people may not see it that way, and they'll only see me as being Latino, and, that's fine. Like, I know what I look like. I don't look necessarily mixed. I look like I'm only Latino, and, I don't fault anybody for that. I'm not holding any grudges or anything, but it's definitely a really unique experience. But, I always make sure to tell people that, family is black and Puerto Rican. I don't ever hide anything. So that's really the only unique experience I had growing up. I really only grew up in a black household, to be honest. So it's really everything there is to it.
Well, yeah, that is unique because I feel like you said, when people look at you at face value, they don't know your story. They don't know the fullness of who you are. And so, seeing how people look at you before they even get to know you, and having that experience of navigating those different spaces where some certain people don't know the fullness of who you are, and how they respond and react to you, versus when they find out exactly what your background is, and they're like, "Oh, you actually are one of us," and how they continue to change their response to you over time. I think that's a really interesting way to navigate life and learn to navigate spaces. So my question for you, Christian, is can you tell us what it's like, or what it was like for you specifically growing up versus when you got to Hampton, navigating a majority black space, and then what it was like navigating the spaces you grew up in, and how that shift took place for you, that cultural.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, luckily growing up, I got to kind of experience both sides of the fence. I did grow up in a with a single father. We were homeless at some points, but most of the time we were pretty okay. I grew up, inner city, a little different, especially because the people that are in the lower middle class aren't usually white people. And then my whole life shifted when I moved to the Hampton Roads area in Williamsburg, and you're around these people that have full families of 8 and $1 million houses, and everyone's pretty well off. So it's definitely different. But again, it gave you that chameleon aspect. Because I am white, I never really had a struggle with racist or prejudice issues. But I mean, economically we struggled, but nothing like that. So the Hampton, it still was a culture shock because you're just yo, this is crazy. This is not, it's not white people. It's different type of people. You just experience so many different outlooks on life, and you see people come from different types of backgrounds and economics too. You see people come from high up, well off, and you see people come from the ground up. If anything, the biggest thing I could take from it was the humility of everything. No matter what background you came from, we're all coming here for a purpose, to better our lives, whether we came from a great background or, a bad one. And I just thought that was so cool, just to see everyone achieving, especially Black excellence. It's definitely a great thing to see, a positive thing to see, especially when you have, white people all across the world, treating people the way they do. It's just kind of great to see this future developing for Black culture and everything. It was great to be a part of it.
Did you have any cultural shock experience when you got to Hampton? This is not something that I would experience anywhere else.
I mean, yeah, just about you're not the big fish in the little pond, small pond. You know what I'm saying? Like you're now under that. Like it's kind of just took a step back. I mean, everything though, like everything. Like I'm the cabarets, the Holland parties, the sport games, like the bands, everything. Like everything was just so different. And I look back and I'm always like, oh, it would have been cool to go to a bigger school, but I really don't think I would have traded my HBCU experience for anything. Because I mean, whether you're white, black, or whatever, there's nothing like an HB experience, and I would encourage whatever cultural background you come from to experience it.
I love that you mentioned the cabarets and the Holland parties because I feel like that ties into like what the HBCU experience in terms of like homecoming experience is very much like directly correlated with who HBCUs are and recognizing that even with that like with just that title homecoming like what that means for white institution versus what it means for a HBCU. And I remember I recently had a conversation. Me and a few other Hampton students were working with the school from San Diego State University. We're working on a project, and we were talking about our experiences at Hampton and how much fun it was attending an HBCU. And they're like, "Wow, like is your school big? Like you sound like you go to like this like awesome big school." And we're like, "No, our school's pretty small, but like the culture is like." Enormous in the way that we were able to impact people, and so that shows. You know, like you said, it doesn't matter what your background is. Everyone is like drawn to that. Everyone wants to know more about like how can I get involved with that. And I think sometimes people don't recognize what we have and like how powerful it is, specifically in the African American community, because everyone is just focused on like the face value of like what I see versus like what I understand, like the power of my story to be, and like recognizing that everyone should be able to like learn and immerse themselves in each other's cultures. And I think Dario, you could probably touch on that, like growing up in Europe, how everyone kind of just like immerses themselves, and like you said, you speak French and like you speak Italian, and like being able to immerse yourself in multiple cultures and like how that works in Europe. And I think in America it's just kind of like you got to stick with the status quo. You got to stick with the people that you know, the people you grew up with, the language you grew up in, culture you grew up in, and if you don't, then it's not necessarily culturally accepted. And like Rose, like growing up with the immigrant household, like I'm sure you probably experienced like friends that could not understand what that meant. And then like when you see things in the news, like what's going on in the Asian American community and like what's going on like with I don't know, so many things like DACA, right? And like how that impacts people like us who are first gen, who come from immigrant households. And it's like this could be my mother, this could be my cousin, my sibling, and people are like they don't understand that because you don't put yourself into other people's shoes, you don't immerse yourself. And I think that's the one thing that is missing from truly being able to like people being able to like maximize the experience of what it means to be in this melting pot country. But Christian, like you touched on it right on the nail, like when you immerse yourself, like you had someone who reached out to you and say like you'll never be able to experience anything like going and stepping into someone else's world, and like when you did, how it changed your life. Like so many more people need to do that, and we need to stop looking as a negative and start seeing it more as a positive. So that's one of the reasons why I want to do this panel tonight, by the way. But yeah, so I am gonna wrap it up because it's getting close to time, but I just want to know if you guys have any advice for any students looking to attend HBCUs or looking to attend specifically your HBCU, and just tell us, you know, maybe your favorite memory from your time at your HBCU, if you've graduated or.
I don't know. I'll start. I guess. Um, One advice I would give is, to be honest, I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think anyone can make it. And because to be honest, like I see me and Christian, because we were at school at the same time, and we were, the only two white guys in the calf most of the times. Um, and you have to be mentally tough, especially at the beginning, in my opinion. You have to be able to accept the fact that you're different, and you have to accept the way other people might feel about you, and give them time to understand and appreciate you as well. So that's like, if you're young and you're 18 and you come out of high school and you're not used to this, it's pretty tough, and it can be absolutely tough. So you have to be ready and mentally prepared to accept it and go beyond that, and just wait and take your time, and do everything correctly and slowly, and just respect everyone. That's, I think, the point. um, I was alone at the calf my whole freshman year, every day, lunch, breakfast, dinner, alone on my table. But slowly, like, everything works out, and you find your own way, and you find your place to be and the people you want to be with. So yeah, that's definitely not an easy thing for everyone, in my opinion, because I know other people in my team, or other white guys in general, just never really melted. They stayed on their own side, and it just never really worked out for them. They probably have a bad experience, to be honest. So you have to live it your own way. And
In response to that, I have a question for you. What made you choose to navigate an HBCU space differently than peers, than your like non-Black peers? Like, why did you feel the need to like immerse yourself into it to the point of actually joining a fraternity? Like, tell me, like, what made you want to say, I want to get myself involved with this culture as much as I can? What about it drew you in a way differently than it did the people who are in your sailing?
so I came to Hampton to learn as much as I could. Not like school wise, but in, like, in relationships, in culture. And I told my teammates and my coach at the beginning, I was like, I'm gonna be with you guys for like the first 2 months, and then I'll be on my own. I'd rather be by myself in my room than staying with you all the time. Because if everybody see me with you all the time, they will not be attracted to me and like talk to me. They think I'm gonna be on my own with you guys. So we argued a lot about that. I was, I think, the only one on my team that just kind of left the team to be on his own, and that was not well perceived. But I had to do it for myself. I wanted to experience it. I wanted to live it. And then slowly I got to understand it better and better. And, everything worked out. It just wasn't easy. Like, I remember first freshman year, at a party, a guy closed the door in my face because I was the white guy trying to enter the party. And now that guy is my line brother, you know? So, so we just laughed at it, but it worked out that way. You just have to keep going and like not give up. And, at the end of the day, it's, if you have to understand that most Black people that go to HBCUs are at HBCUs, they want to be around Black people. And it's now my turn or my time to tell them when it's okay for them to let me in. It's their place. They want to be there. So I guess it's like their time and their moments. Just wait for it. Everybody will be cool. It's probably not at the beginning, but everything will work out.
I love that you touched on the topic of respect, because I think that is an entire conversation. We could like spin our like this whole like what you just touched on right now, I can make into another event, simply because I talk about it with my peers nonstop, because there is a disconnect. It is very real. And like you said, you chose very intentionally to make sure that you put yourself in the position to be okay with being uncomfortable. And look, from my experience at Hampton, it's been very interesting, because I did my undergrad fall 2018 semester abroad in my country of origin, in Cameroon. And to be in a space where I am like surrounded by people who I know and who look like me, but then I'm going to school with people who don't, and to see how they navigated that space, or how they chose to like not immerse themselves, that was something that I really recognized in there. Like, there is a disconnect, and I saw it very like strongly once I did go abroad, because it's not something that I was really, I guess, so keen on. at Hampton, but like that is a real thing. Like wanting to do whatever you can to remain comfortable. And like I just applaud you for like choosing at a young age. Like you weren't that old. You must have been like what, 18, coming all the way from another continent to choose to be uncomfortable like that. That is a stand-up thing to do because not many people would want to do that, especially that young. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your story, Christian, how you chose to navigate and any advice you have when wanting to do.
I mean, yeah, I think Dario touched upon it pretty well. Like, you definitely have to take a step back. It's not really your platform, you know what I'm saying? It's your chance to learn. It's not your choice to be like the loudest person in the room. Um, I walked on to the track and football team, so I was like a speck of dust. I was like the white guy walk on kicker. So I definitely was treated like a speck of dirt when I first got on campus. But again, it's a humbling experience, and it was cool. I mean, I ended up really well in both sports, and people naturally gravitated towards me, and it was just it was a great experience because I mean, I got to earn a whole new appreciation and outlook on respect for a whole new group of people. And so I really, best advice is just when you go, just be a sponge. And like Dario said, just be respectful of the presence, the opportunity, and the situation that you chose to put yourself in. And only good things can come out of it.
I love it. I love it. So next we have, who do I see next? I'll go with Christopher, and then Rose will go with you. So Christopher, tell me what advice you have for anyone looking to attend Howard, and what advice you have for them if they are not a Black student, and like what advice you would say to maybe like navigate Howard in that way, and what you would say your piece of advice for them is with Howard, because I know Howard culture is different to Hampton, so I can't really like compare in the same way. So tell us what that would be like for someone looking to attend Howard, and what advice.
Okay, so to start off, I'm just going to talk about advice for anybody that just wants to come to Howard. It's seen as, one of the top HBCUs in the country, and, the Mecca, because it's a huge culmination of Black people from all over the world. I mean, you see people who are, from Africa, or who are from, South America, Central America, or from Europe, or, from Asia. You see a lot of different people, a lot of different Black people, that is, that have various different backgrounds. And as long as you keep that in mind, and, you walk through Howard University with the respect that, it deserves, because, it's through years and years of Black people, famous Black people, going through the halls that you'll be studying, that lived in the dorms that you'll be staying in. As long as you go through Howard University with the knowledge of that, of how much it really means to go to one of the top HBCUs in the country, then I think you're fine, because as long as the respect is there, then you should have no problems. Really, that's really all there is to it for anybody that wants to come to Howard University, whether you're Black or not Black. And that's really the biggest thing that I would have for anybody that wants to come to Howard University. Now, for people who aren't Black, who aren't like just Black, I would like kind of talk to people who are kind of like me, who are Black and Latino, who have their mom or dad is Black, and the mom or dad is Latino, and it's kind of split like that. I would really recommend to go to an HBCU. I'd really recommend to go to Howard University or any other HBCU that's around you, because you got to really embrace both sides of who you are, being Black and Latino, because you see a lot in the Afro-Latino community. There will be Latinos that either look like me and they don't really look Black, and they'll absolutely neglect and deny their Black side. And that's really one of the things that I hate the most about, the culture, because there is a huge hatred towards, Blackness, towards Black people. And it's very real. You can see this in Brazil the most, I would say. And of course, in the Dominican Republic and a lot of other countries where they will deny being Black so much, that they'll do stuff to their hair, they'll do stuff to their skin. And that's really the one thing that I hate about the Latino culture. That it has that aspect in some places, this isn't like literally everywhere, but in some places, there will be people who like hate themselves because they come from Black people and that's their ancestors. So really embrace both sides of who you are, being Afro-Latino, embrace your Black side and your side. And one good way to do that is, for one, of course, having the respect, like I mentioned before, when going to HBCU, and two, being around other Black people, possibly being around other Afro-Latinos, because I've met Afro-Latinos who just look Black. Like you would have never thought, oh, you're Black and Puerto Rican, but no, they say, oh, I'm Afro-Latino too. But they just look like a regular Black person, and you look and see Afro-Latinos that look like yourself and only look Latino, and be like, oh no, my dad's Black actually. I just kind of look like this, and it's like, oh wow, you'll see a range of other Afro-Latinos, other Black people, other Latinos that have the same similar background as you, of having to navigate between being Black and Latino, having to navigate those two sides. And that's really why I want you to go to HBCU, because you're not going to get that really at a PWI, at a predominantly white institution. It's a really good time for you to delve into that other side of you that, you haven't really been into, especially if, maybe your Black side of your family hasn't been in your life for whatever reason. So I'd really recommend Afro-Latinos to really attend HBCUs and really go in there with the respect and with the, with the feeling that, you can gain a lot from being there. You can also give back and really see the world more than what you probably have been, growing up in your neighborhood or your community.
I love that. So is there anything, because I think that was some awesome topics that you discussed and that you touched on. Is there anything specifically that attending an HBCU has taught you and that you've like learned about yourself being Afro-Latino? Like, has the HBCU experience taught you more about yourself and your identity? And like, can you tell us a little bit?
A little bit. I wouldn't say it's like revolutionary because, like I don't ever deny like half my entire family, because I could just never see myself doing that. Like, so it wasn't like revolutionary, but it was like the small things that, that I had to kind of like realize and take a step back, because, when I'm with my family, most of my family is just Black. And I don't know, I don't make that distinction like, oh, I look Latino, or, it's like this is my family, and with any other Black person that I see at Howard or in my life, I'm just like my family because they look like my family. This looks like my brother, this looks like my cousin, this looks like, everybody else. And one thing that I had to kind of realize was, I don't look like their family, and I can't really be in, that kind of reciprocal relationship. It'll kind of only go one way, because I see them as my family, but they kind of see me as just like a Latino guy. And if they don't know me, and that, restricts me from, of course, being in like certain spaces and doing certain things. Like, for example, I would never be on a panel of, what it's like to be growing up Black in America, because the way I look, I can obviously, grow up in America with a completely different, lifestyle compared to somebody who looks, just Black, and who doesn't come from my background. So that's really the biggest thing that I've had to realize, because, growing up in my family, kind of like, just be comfortable and, think everything's fine. But, I had to really realize that, I can't be in every single space, even though that is, where I come from, being Black and Latino. I can't be into every single space. I speak for every single thing, and it's fine, because I need to step back and allow that time and space and opportunity for people who actually go through, those issues. And that's totally fine with me, because, I understand how I look like, and I understand how, the rest of the world perceives me. And it's very different from how the world will perceive a Black person who looks, just Black. So that's, the one thing I've kind of had to realize.
Wow, thank you so much for your transparency and your honesty on that topic. So, Rose, do you have anything that you would like to share with any students interested in attending Hampton or interested in attending a HBCU?
Yes. So like what Dario said, you have to come in. Well, going to an HBCU as a non-black person is not for everybody. So just to reiterate what Dario had said, it's not for everybody. You have to come in mentally strong. Like there was a few experiences like walking through the student my freshman year fall semester going to Olin, where like I would hear like people like talk about me, and like at first like it affected me because I was like, you know, why are they like saying this, like these things about me, like I don't understand, like I chose to come here, like I wanted to come here, or I want to come here, I wanted to be here. And then I just had to reflect on myself and to understand that not everybody is going to, like, not everybody knows your story, not everybody knows why you're doing the things you do. You're just going to have to live your life without thinking about how everybody else thinks about you. So you definitely have to come in mentally strong, and understanding. So yes, like being respectful as well, but also understanding. So for me, I understood, you know, why those students, you know, why they were saying the things that they were about me, because like going to an HBCU is not for me. Like, you know, or like an HBCU was made for Black people, you know, to get an education back then, and still is now. And it's just like now we're seeing like that diversity in it, but it's just being able to understand where everybody else is coming from. Like everybody said, like you got to take a step back, like be on the back burner and just soak in everything that's around you and just understand why some people may have, you know, the thoughts that they do have about you and whatnot. So that's definitely what I'm going to say. And tips on, you know, going to an HBCU. Oh, like, yeah, for me, like, it was just having to wait to find, like, my group of friends. Like, it took a minute for me to get adjusted in the engineering department just with our curriculum freshman year. But because our curriculum is so rigorous and, like, we had to take 18 credit hours post semester, I was able to build that bond with the other students. So I could definitely say, like, you know, just wait it out a little bit, understand, you know, have those conversations, especially like for me being Asian growing up in America versus my peers being Black growing up in America, again, that understanding right there. So like they understand why I think the way I do, and I understand why they think the way they do, and it just helps us better understand each other and just form like a greater bond with each other. So I could definitely say like a good chunk of my friends, obviously they're in the engineering department. I don't have a outside the engineering department, but yeah, just wait it out, be strong-minded, and understand. You just have to understand. So definitely come in with an open mindset as well. So
I love that. And one thing I want to touch on is what you said earlier about when you get to Hampton, like immerse yourself in understanding the history of African Americans and the history of people of African descent, because you will understand like the ground you're walking on without doing that. You have to be intentional. Like intentionality is the main thing that will change your experience from like, I don't feel comfortable here, I don't relate to these people here, and they embrace me and I don't embrace them, to like we're family and they see me and they don't choose to like not embrace me because of the way I may look or the pen that I may have, but they see that I respect them. They see that I understand where they're coming from. They see that I respect the grounds, the sacred grounds that I'm walking on, and I want to learn and come here to immerse myself to understand like the history of these people. And I think that that can really save yourself a lot of time from dealing with, like you said, like microaggressions that may come, because they will be there. And you said you have to be mentally tough to be able to like understand like you're not going to be embraced, because you have to earn that respect. Like when you're walking onto those grounds, that's something that is sacred, and we fought hard for that. And so like when you begin to understand our history, then you can understand why we are the way we are, why we say the things we do, why we act the way we act. And you may not be able to understand everything because you're not one of us, but you may be able to understand like where we come from. So that might help you to get a better understanding of who we are as a people. And so I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Dario, thank you for staying awake. I know it's like, what, 1 a.m. there?
Yeah, 1:40.
Yeah, 1:40. So you are a trooper. Thank you so much. How do you say thank you in Italian? Don't tell me. Grazie, right? Yeah, so grazie. And I am just this just went way better than I was expecting it to. Honestly, I didn't know how tonight was going to go. I was just like, we're just going to see how this goes because I wanted to like let the conversation flow naturally. You guys are like, oh, like, do you have any questions? I was like, we'll just have the conversation when we get on here because I wanted to have everything flow naturally, and it went well. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you for your transparency and your honesty, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.